Hello and welcome to another video from the only channel that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And I made a video, posted it a little while ago, about God's name in the Bible. And the only reason that I did that is because I wanted you to be prepared for the video that I'm posting right now, which is going to be about some really strange conspiracy theorist, Antichrist stuff. Now, I have no intention of becoming the Antichrist conspiracy theorist watchdog. In fact, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I don't jump on board every strange thing that comes by and make a big deal out of it. But when things are really weird, and they're really weird in a really weird way that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, I have no problem becoming a conspiracy exposer. You see, there's a difference. Conspiracy theorist and conspiracy exposer are not the same thing. Now, before we get started on this, the first thing I need to tell you is that there are things being done in this world that are extremely weird. There's a lot of people out there on YouTube and other places that are exposing them. Most of it is true, weird stuff that these people do. But the reality is, it's like these guys have been doing the same kind of stuff for 6,000 years. There is really no reason to believe that the people I'm going to talk about today are instrumental in a way that's different than those other people from the past. Those people back then were obviously demonic, evil, powerful humans. And the people I'm going to talk about right now are demonic, evil, powerful humans. No real difference. But we're living closer to the last days now than the people living in George Washington's day were. We're much, much closer than the people who lived back in Osiris, Horus, and Isis day. And so what I'm saying today may be more about the Antichrist than what happened back then, simply because it's more current. All right, we already talked about the fact that I really like this Bible because it accurately restores the name of God as Yahweh every place that it belongs and does not put it where it doesn't belong. We've also talked about the fact that I really love this Bible, but the one thing I don't like about it is the fact that it restores the name as Jehovah in every place where the word Jehovah should be, but it also puts it where it does not belong, which I don't like. So these are the two Bibles we're talking about. Now, there are a whole bunch of other Bibles out there but that have God's name in them as Jehovah or Yahweh. However, those Bibles are either very old, very expensive, or they're produced by some small cult and not very good versions of the Bible. You know, if a really, really small cult produces a really good Bible, I have no problem with it, but it's just a fact that most of the Bibles that restore God's name as Yahweh or Jehovah or just junk Bibles. Not a problem saying that at all. Now, I wouldn't have even known that God's name was restored in this Bible, except a friend of mine who just happens to be a subscriber sent me or posted a video on a little thing he does every now and then called Bibles on the Bench, where he reviews Bibles that he's read. And it brought to my attention that this was a really accepted, commercially available, readily available, easy to get a hold of Bible that had God's name restored in it. And so I purchased it. Now, just by coincidence, I happened to open it up to this page. And right here, I just happened to see that this Bible was printed by Bantam Doubleday Dell Publishing Group Incorporated, 666 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York. 666 Fifth Avenue. It's not every day that you see a Bible with the number 666 in it, other than in the text when it's talking about the, 666, the number of the beast. And so I Skyped my friend that posted the video. He was a little nervous at first because I said, "Did you know that this book was published at 666 Fifth Avenue?" And he says, "Well, I like it." Well, guess what? I like it too, but I just wondered if you knew that that was in there. And he says, "Well, mine doesn't say that." So apparently, at one time, these were printed, or these were published somewhere else. They're at the time that this one was made, it was published at through that address, 666 Fifth Avenue. Now, something I already knew about that address is that it was at one time the single most expensive real estate purchase in history. And the person who purchased it, this is the fact that you need to pay attention to. The person that purchased it was a man named Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner is an Orthodox Jew that just happens to be married to Donald Trump's daughter. So this is Donald Trump's son-in-law, and immediately after taking office as president, Donald Trump appointed this man as his chief advisor. This is a guy that went out and bought 666 Fifth Avenue. Now, if you're wondering why he would buy such a property, well, go look at it. Go look at the pictures of it. I can promise you that it is not all that spectacular of a building. There is nothing in the architecture that would indicate it was worth that. These kind of guys will spend every penny they can get their hands on to do stuff in your face to indicate who they support in the invisible realm. Purchasing a not that great of a building for the most amount of money ever spent is simply his way of telling you that he supports the beast, the one who is marked by this 666. And honestly, it doesn't mean anything. It's just one of those things that they do to get in your face and brag about who they are and what they are without just coming out and saying, I love Satan, because that's what they're telling you. So anyways, after I told him that, I said, you know, Jared Kushner is Donald Trump's son-in-law. Well, my friend said, well, you might not be aware of this, but did you know that the Watchtower and Bible and Tract Society sold their facilities where this Bible is published? And I thought, who did they sell that to? Donald Trump. So here we are. This is just one of those weird things. I am not trying to lead you to believe that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. I'm not trying to make you think that Jared Kushner is the Antichrist. These guys are doing the same exact things that George Washington did, that King James I of England did, that the king of the Phoenicians did before that, the king of the Assyrians before that, the king of Egypt before that. This is just a regular scheduled thing that they do. And irregardless of whether Donald Trump one day becomes the Antichrist or Jared Kushner becomes the Antichrist, this stuff was done on purpose. These are the only two books, only two versions of the Bible that are readily available, that restore God's name to the text of the Bible. The place where this was published belonged at one time to Jared Kushner, and in some legalistic fashion may still somewhat belong to him. The place where this was published now belongs to the Trump family, to Donald Trump. Now, I'm not trying to make you believe that Donald Trump and Jared Kushner are going to start publishing Bibles with the name of God in them, and I'm not trying to make you believe that they purchased those buildings so they could stop the publication of Bibles with God's name in it. I'm just telling you that that's a really weird thing that they obviously did on purpose, just to tell their God that they're willing to do whatever it takes to make his name known. Now, something else I got to tell you before I close this video out is that this book is no longer published because it was replaced by this. This is the New Jerusalem Bible. And like the one that came before it, it restores God's name, and it is no longer published through that address, 666 Fifth Avenue. And this is the new version of the New World Translation, and it is no longer published at the facilities that were purchased by Donald Trump. But before I say goodbye, I want to make you aware of another really weird thing that I noticed on this book that I had never noticed before, and that is a little Doubleday symbol down here. Now, I looked that thing up, and it means something like sure but steady, or over the, slowly but surely. It's kind of like a reference to the tortoise and the hare deal. But it's a dolphin going downwards, a spiraling around an anchor. I got to thinking, this looks a whole lot like the symbol that shows up everywhere else of a cross with a serpent going up. You know, if you turn a cross upside down, it suddenly looks a whole lot like an anchor. And even though this is a dolphin wrapped around that staff, he looks an awful lot like a serpent wrapped around a staff. So I looked up why that would be a dolphin. And actually what I looked up was dolphin, D-A-U-P-H-I-N. That's the French word for dolphin. And it actually has a little bit of a hidden meaning because it's based on a family that was called Dolphin. They were the kings. And it just became customary that when a king was preparing to take his throne, he would be called the Dolphin. So it wasn't the king himself that was called the Dolphin, it was the runner-up. And in fact, if you look up the word dolphin, it will say French word for dolphin, but underneath that it will say something like runner-up. Now if we take it, you know, remember that Satan is called the great serpent. This dolphin, being the runner-up, could be the guy that's getting ready to replace him, and that would be our Savior. But there's also other things that play into this. In popular culture for the last 6,000 years, there have been images of serpents on snakes or serpents on sticks, on staffs, over and over. And sometimes it's two serpents on one stick. Sometimes it's one serpent on two sticks. The dollar bill symbol, you know, that S with the two lines on it, that's the same symbol. And if you look that up, the dollar bill symbol, dictionary, Wikipedia, whatever, it'll tell you that it's supposed to be like a banner wrapped around the what's called the Pillars of Hercules. Well, the Pillars of Hercules are nothing more than the two pillars that were established by Solomon when he built the temple. Now, one of them memorializes the other, and I'm not going to try to figure out which came first, the Pillars of Hercules or the Pillars of Solomon, but they're the same thing. They represent the same thing. In our modern day, those two pillars are represented, or were represented, by the two twin towers built in New York City, which were recently demolished by a so-called terrorist attack. Now, those pillars that were put up by Solomon were given names. One was Boaz, which means fleetness, and the other was Joachim, which means he will establish. In cultures outside of the Bible, symbols such as this are called the rod of Asclepius, not to be confused with the caducees. See, all of these rods represent different things. Like this one here, even though that represents Doubleday, what it actually represents is publishing. Because if you look this symbol up, you're going to see that publishers have been putting this on their books forever. And like I said, it's kind of means slowly but surely. Unlike warfare. Warfare does things, you know, expedites things. It does things speedily. You want to conquer a people, you just go drop bombs on them until they submit. With propaganda, you just keep putting ideas in their head until they submit. And I'm not saying that the Bible is propaganda, but the Bible's often used as propaganda. World leaders will hold this thing up and say that they support this because they know there's a lot of weight behind this book. And if they can convince people that they are all for the Bible, a lot of times people will willingly follow them anywhere that they want to lead them. But like I say, sometimes it's two poles with one serpent. Sometimes it's two serpents on one pole. Sometimes it's a serpent going up across. Sometimes it's going down across. But they're all related. And as time goes on, I'll try to do a video about this. It involves the constellations. And the reason there's two of those pillars, although there are multiple reasons, one of the reasons is that those two pillars represent changes in the Earth's axes. And it's also represented by the fact that on one, the serpent is going up, on the other, the dolphin is going down. Because people in the southern hemisphere would perceive the constellations in a different way than people in the northern hemisphere. I hope that was interesting enough to make it worth the wait, worth the listen. And as always, if you do not want to survive, don't listen to me.